Final Fantasy VII has a very interesting relationship with scars. If you look at Zack's face, one of the first things you'll realize is he has a scar. If you look at when Cloud attacked Tifa, it was over a scar. Heck, even I have a scar. So today we're talking about scars and Final Fantasy VII with a small caveat that will break the whole Final Fantasy VII theory crafting ideas.
What do you mean by that?
And let you know it's all a dream. To start out this conversation today, I want to talk about a few kind of separate ideas, a few kind of separate instances where Final Fantasy VII has shown us that scars are important. Before I get to the defense of the idea, I want to first start this off with something from Dirge of Cerberus. There's a scene in Dirge of Cerberus where Vincent is attacked by Rosso, where Rosso jukes her hand into freaking Vincent's chest and rips out the materia. And Yuffie shows up and does her smoke bomb and actually saves Vincent. And when we're in the back of the truck where we find out it's Yuffie saving Vincent, Vincent asks, because he's a little bit confused, a little bit dazed because Rosso just whooped his butt. And he's like, where am I? What's going on? What happened? And Yuffie pretty much explained to him what just happened. You had a huge damage to your chest, but now it seems that it's completely healed. Okay, interesting. So we know that certain experiments of HOJO have the ability to completely heal their body. But does that apply to anybody else? Let's develop the idea. Next, we have Zack Fair. We know that when Zack fought Monster Angel, he got slashed in the face. And we have that iconic scar in Zack's face that shows us the struggle he had with fighting his mentor. After that scene, we also know that Zack was a first-class soldier. He would likely have a lot of the similar regenerative abilities that Vincent would have, since Vincent is an older prototype of what Zack is. Next, we understand that the Nibelheim Reactor happened after Zack was slashed in the face. So he was placed into a Mako Tank, and even that didn't cure the scar on his face. So now we have one experiment of HOJO, Vincent, who was able to self-regenerate and heal himself. One experiment of HOJO that was not able to cure the scar on his face. And this is not a Sephiroth video, but do you think Sephiroth would have the same regenerative abilities as Vincent or as Zack? Let me know in the comments. Moving on. I talked about in one of my recent videos, Trace of Two Past, and how we find out that after Tifa got slashed up by Sephiroth, she was rushed to a hospital in Midgar and was able to get the necessary treatment that she needed to cover up her scar. That's why it's not very visibly apparent. Even though we see the wound when Cloud goes to pick her up at the Nibelheim Reactor, even though she shows her scar to Cloud on 2 occasions, some of them that we don't directly see, it was always curious to me that scar on Zack's face, still see it, scar on Tifa, don't really see it. But this is what the video is really about. Spoiler warning.
You are not alone.
This is a spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning.
Hello there. This is a spoiler warning. Turn off now or forever hold your peace.
Do you remember this scene? Now tell me, if we know consistently, canonically, that Sephiroth slashes leave scars, because he slashed Tifa, Tifa has a scar, but all of a sudden, Cloud Strife gets stabbed through his freaking chest, and wait, does he have a scar? I can't really think of a time in the original where Cloud would have his shirt off to show us his scar. Oh, but wait, thanks to Rebirth, we have exactly what I'm looking for. And no, it's not Cloud in his sexy ass 6-pack, 8-pack, 12-pack, whatever he's got going on. It is this reality? So tell me now, do you think that if we have consistency in the canon of Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth using the Masamune slashing people, creating a scar, do you think Cloud would have a scar? Yes or no? Now, where exactly is the scar? Because it should be apparent right in his chest where the scar is. And if you followed my channel, you know that I have this theory that everybody disagrees with, one timeline theory that says in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, when Zack went to drop Cloud, when he was still Mako poisoned out of his freaking mind, right next to the rocks, and he went to then go fight the Shinra troops, that from that moment, when Cloud lifts up his hand to Zack, that from that moment, it's all a dream. And they're remaking the story because we already lived through Cloud psychosis and psychological warfare, PTSD, whatever you want to call it, in the original game. So what would be an even bigger twist that Square Enix could do in the Final Fantasy VII R series? And that would be to let us live out the entirety of the Final Fantasy VII game, and then at the end, show us that none of this actually happened. None of this was part of the real world. None of this is how we wanted it to really go in the original. Because on my end, you would see that, okay, we know that at the final end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Cloud sees the ring up on the sky. We know that in Final Fantasy VII OG, that same ring is at the bottom of his subconscious scene when he's not awake, when he's dreaming. We know in Final Fantasy VII OG, Cloud goes to sleep a few times. We know in Crisis Core, Cloud goes in and out of consciousness a few times. We know in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, Cloud goes in and out of consciousness a couple times. We know in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cloud has hallucinations about Sephiroth, about people who are there, about scenarios that didn't happen. So why is it crazy to think that Cloud's PTSD and Mako poisoning is actually far worse than we think? And that is the key to the idea that all of this is a dream, and Cloud is actually in Zack's timeline in that wheelchair, waiting for Zack to find a cure, for him to wake up and walk out of the wheelchair. Because answer this for me, and you can if you want. Aerith tells us, you can't fall in love with me because it's just a dream. Okay, interesting choice of words. End of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We see the sky, same sky in Cloud's subconscious. Don't look up. The same thing Aerith tells him when they're in a dream. How does Aerith know that Cloud is in a wheelchair when we enter her subconscious scene for the date, where she gives him the white materia right after they fall down from the black materia that he gives it to Sephiroth? How does Aerith know that Cloud is in a wheelchair in Aerith's house? Because we only know that because Zack brought us there after he dragged us from the rock and he survived this scene in the final battle where he now survived because of the wind. The wind changed and I realized that it was Aerith, or I surmised that it was Aerith that changed the events of the future. And the interesting part about that is in Trace of Two Past, Aerith actually foresees and changes the future of an individual named Marcellus. He got beat up, attacked by a monster, gets stuck outside, ran away from home. I forget, it's a super complex thing about the mob and attacking, and his dad is part of the mob, and Elmira's also part of the mob, and everyone's trying to fight for a battle, and Elmira eventually gives up the hold of her possessions to the mob, and they come and they run, and he runs away because his dad's sick and all this kind of stuff. But anyways, he ends up being injured, and Aerith has a freaking flash forward of the live stream and sees exactly where he is and tells one of the mobster lackeys, this is where Marcellus is. You need to go find him right now or he's going to die. So a couple years after that scene happens, Marcellus comes back to Elmira's house, or Aerith's house, their house. And he actually tells Aerith about the Sector 5 freaking mob wars that were going on and how their district was considered the safety district and how nobody was allowed to even fight in her district because if they did, they'd be immediately executed. So everybody knew there was something special about Aerith. Is the thing about Aerith that she's able to foresee the future? You would likely say that because of what's happening in Remake. Is because there's a multitude of different futures and worlds like Sephiroth tells us when he's talking to Cloud. All of these can be possibilities, but for me, the biggest thing is, are we in the dream world or are we in the real world? Let me know in the comments and let's argue about it. Dream or awake? There's gonna be more to this, and I'll catch you on the next one.